So whether you're a health conscious individual, a wellness enthusiast, or someone who's looking out for the right kind of information on health and nutrition, because there's just so much information out there, well, we've got you covered. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ishi Speaks, your gateway to good health. And I'm your host, Ruchira Sharma. I will be talking to well-known clinical nutritionist Ishi Khosla, and today our focus is something that is viral and very interesting, especially after the dramatic weight loss of well-known actress Vidya Balan. That is the anti-inflammatory diet. So let's understand what is the diet, what does it really entail, and how does it work. So let's get started. So welcome to Ishi Speaks.
Thank you, Ruchira.
So tell me, let's start with the basic. What causes inflammation? Or actually, let me rephrase that. What is inflammation?
Well, I think after Vidya Balan, this has become a hot topic.
Absolutely.
Yes. And inflammation is actually of two kinds, but the one that you're referring to is what we call chronic low-grade inflammation, which is the reason for almost all the diseases that we face and we suffer. Every
current lifestyle diseases.
Yes, everything starts with inflammation. That's the starting point.
All right.
And inflammation, if you want to understand, a very easy way of relating to it is fire.
Okay.
It's like a low-grade fire which is there
in your belly
body.
or in your gut?
Starts in the gut. Yes.
All right.
And there are other reasons and other places also where it can, but primarily it begins in the gut, and it's a slow-grade fire or a low-grade fire that can gradually destroy your cells.
All right.
And that's what we see.
And it does the opposite of the phrase, "Now fire in your belly." This is actually not a good fire in the belly.
And it's too much fire. Yeah,
yes.
It's too much fire. And there is fire, what I said, there are two kinds of inflammations. One is acute inflammation, which is when you have a proper disease, fever, and that is protective. Whereas this one is destructive.
All right. So what are the foods that cause inflammation? I mean, so that we can eliminate them from our diets.
So if you understand the fact that it begins in the gut when there is an imbalance of the gut microbiome, the foods which trigger the imbalance is what we have to see.
All right.
And these trigger foods can be anything which personally you do not handle well, or they
which are harder to digest,
or they're processed foods, or they're chemically based foods, or too much of sugar. All of these can destroy the gut microbiome, the balance, and then the cascade of inflammatory cytokines builds up, and that sort of goes through the whole body. So it is what we call sets up a reaction. The wrong food sets up a reaction to the microbes, which causes an imbalance, which causes what we call a leaky gut, and that leads to food sensitivities and inflammation.
And then inflammation, of course, contributes to various lifestyle diseases. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, everything begins with inflammation. All chronic degenerative diseases start with inflammation. So there is literally like cellular breakdown of the fire which is destroying the cells, and so we don't want to get into the biochemistry of or the physiology of this, but if we want to be healthy, we have to reduce inflammation in our body. Now, is the food the only contributor? Yes, it is the biggest contributor of inflammation. And some of the grains that we typically eat are seemingly the key contributors of inflammation in our diet. Of course, it worsens with age and because of whatever reasons. However, even the pollutants in, say for instance, today the AQIs are at an all-time high.
We're in Delhi, so
that is also triggering inflammation. All the pesticides, all the chemicals in our food, the preservatives, and the medicines that we take, the chemicals that we have through medicines, be it hormone therapy or being it anything which is chemically based, is also going to disturb the microbiome and cause inflammation. So we don't have a control over those. You know,
All right.
we don't control the environment, we don't control our water supplies, we don't exposure to toxins and heavy metals is not really within our own individual controls. But what we can really control is what we eat.
Yes.
And therefore you have the biggest tool to control inflammation.
Sure. So that brings me to my next question. Inflammation can vary person to person, right? So what can cause inflammation for me may not do the same for you. And yet there are a few anti-inflammatory foods, and like you were talking about Vidya Balan, it's all over the internet how she's lost weight ever since she's a dramatic weight loss she's witnessed ever since she adopted an anti-inflammatory diet. So can you tell us, for our audience, what is an anti-inflammatory diet and maybe 5 foods that are anti-inflammatory?
So see, in my experience, the biggest game changer is the grain change. So whenever you look at inflammation, address the quality and the quantity and the timing of your grain, which is very, very simple to do. Very simple to do. That means if you're going to avoid the triggers in grains, typically we know wheat, corn, soya, and some others can trigger inflammation, and in some people even some millets can. You know, if your digestion is poor, even that can be, you can start reacting to them. So the number one, the quantum also is important. So quality of the grain and the quantity of the grain. Too much of rice. So
and again, it's a carb-heavy diet that we end up taking.
Yeah, too much of a good grain can also be a problem. And then the timing. If we don't focus on the digestive fire and the best digestive time of the day, if we load up our grains at night, it's going to be counterproductive, and it's going to cause digestive issues and imbalanced gut microbiome, and then thereby all the inflammation.
Various issues, yes.
So number one I would say is grains, and number two is too much of sugar and too much of carbohydrates.